Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to another Tuesday Cruiser Chat with Otram. Same format as always, no real planned anything. Just whatever questions you guys have. I will do my best to answer them. Trying to think what's going on new at the shop. We've got a whole bunch of engines out. And I started working on the 1FZ timing chain, timing cover video today. So hopefully I'll have part one of that out shortly. We're slowly getting stuff moved over to the new side of the shop and starting to use the expanded space. And hey, Dave, and I still haven't forgotten about you. I need to call you. The stupid microphone on my phone is dead. So if I call you, I'll be able to hear you, but you won't be able to hear me. But you're on my list of people to talk to. Wanted to show the coolest thing. These came in the mail today. Guy was on chat, I guess, a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about different merchandising type things. And he's got an Etsy shop that does laser engraving. And he sent me, and I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see these or not, a set of valve stems that are laser engraved with the Otram logo on them, which is just super awesomely cool. But yeah, it's Outsane FJ80 on Instagram. And I'll type that in here. But big thanks to him. These valve stems are super awesome. I never thought I would say these valve stems are awesome, but they're really cool. So those will go on the Shady 80. And hopefully, I just typed that in right. Yeah, I almost wore my Otram shirt tonight, but I wore my Tubal Cane Mr. Pete shirt. If you guys don't know Mr. Pete on YouTube, super awesome machine shop teacher. I love his channel. So I'm wearing my Mr. Pete shirt. Yeah, how's it going, Miles? I just totally lost my place. But yeah, we started on the timing chain video, working on just finished up an FJ60 rear frame crossmember and stiffeners. Got the stiffeners from Jason out at Trail Tailor, and those fit awesome. But apparently he's not doing the rear crossmember anymore, so I just scratch built one of those yesterday and today. So that was an interesting project. Yeah, that's my problem with shirts, Dave. I've got to leave all my shirts that I want to wear and look nice. They have to go in a separate drawer to make sure that I don't get them gross, because my work shirts end up being destroyed. But yeah, I've been picking up YouTube guys' shirts. I've got the Mr. Pete one, and then I've got one from Keith Rucker over at Vintage Machinery. VintageMachinery.org, also an amazing YouTube channel. He does machine shop videos and restores antique machinery, which is awesome. I've been watching his channel to get tips on working on my old lathe and the drill press, stuff like that. Yeah, I need an A-bomb shirt. I've got a set of AVE's stickers from a couple of years ago. I got some AVE stickers. I want the Cockford Ollie AVE t-shirt, but I haven't gotten around to ordering it yet. But yes, those are also excellent channels. I watch way too much YouTube in the morning while I'm eating breakfast. And I watch way too many machine shop channels for not being a machinist. And AVE is just cool. Just because he does so many different things. Scott says just did a wheel bearing on the front of his 100, but doesn't know if the preload's right. So when I do them, I generally don't follow the manual, just because I learned how to do wheel bearings before, learning the manual method. And I'll snug up the first adjuster nut to like 50 foot-pounds, spin the hub a couple of times in both directions, uh, to get everything seated, settled in, and then I'll back that nut off, go finger tight, and then an eighth to a quarter of a turn. And usually, like between an eighth and a quarter, ends up with the right preload. I've never actually done the torque the outer nut. I learned to do them by feel, and with the eighth to quarter method. And so far, it's always worked well. And then Miles says, have a question. Dad's 100 series just had timing belt done. Feels a slight power loss. Could the timing belt be off? What year 100 series? I mean, I would think on any of them, you would get a cam correlation code, if the timing were off. Of course, I guess there's only a cam sensor on the driver's side bank. So if the passenger side sprocket were off out of time, you could still have a loss of power without codes, because the engine would still think you were in time because it's reading the crank and the driver's side camshaft. So theoretically, I guess it could be a timing belt that's out of time. Luckily the two upper covers are pretty easy to take off. You can roll the crank pulley to top dead center and then see if the cam gears or the cam sprockets, line up with the timing marks. And it's not the T's, it's just the straight marks. And they should be really close to lined up. And if you don't see them at all, spin the engine another revolution over and see if they line up. That's the quickest and easiest way to know if the timing belt's off. You can do it with an oscilloscope and a pressure sensor, but that's a lot more involved, and most folks don't have the stuff to do that. And awesome, John. Glad the power seat video helped. God, that's one of the very early videos. I need to redo that one next time I do that job. Now that we've got a better camera and better lighting. Trying to think what else on a 9900 series would cause loss of power after a timing belt. Because I can't think of anything that you would unhook that would not get hooked back up that would cause loss of power. The only other thing I can think of, and it's a long shot, is if they had the radiator out and lost a lot of trans fluid, and you're low on trans fluid and the transmission is slipping some. But that would be a long shot. I would bet more on passenger side camshaft being out of time. Yeah, I can't think of anything else off the top of my head that would do it. Yeah, I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. PHH kit, any tips other than the usual cut the soft line, break the bottom bolt? You're not actually breaking the bottom bolt, you're breaking the bracket that bolts on. Nope. I mean, that's the fastest, easiest way to do it. Just run a razor blade, through the middle of the pesky heater hose, be really careful. As it starts to cut, you're going to get coolant dripping out, which is going to make, the blade really slick. I've come really close to putting a razor blade through my hand doing that job several times. But if you just slice the bottom hose, unhook the top hose, there's a 12 millimeter headed bolt at the top of the pipe, kind of back behind the EGR valve. Once that's out, you can just kind of wiggle the pipe back and forth, and eventually that lower bracket will break free, and you can get everything out. I I am slowly catching up on the backlog of estimates. I think I'm down to about 20 of them. Yeah, we got inundated with estimate requests while I was in Portugal, and then the week after, and with the ones that I had already backlogged pre-Portugal, it's been a struggle to catch back up. Trying to balance writing estimates and getting trucks done in the shop. I'm working on them, but yeah, I'm still running behind on estimates. And a JT91 FJ80 stereo removal, only 2 screws in the ashtray. It has been forever since I took an early 80 dash out to do a radio, but that sounds right. I know on the later ones, it's just the 2 screws in the ashtray. Yeah, there's a lot of clips. They make like plastic pry bars for doing dash work. You can get expensive ones, but the Harbor Freight ones seem to work just as well. And you're going to break and lose them even if you get the expensive ones. So we just get the Harbor Freight ones. Yeah, the cubby for the cup holder just kind of pulls out on the later ones. But yeah, I think it's just clips around the surround, and then you're going to have to, undo all the electrical plugs on the back. And I guess there are screws inside the cup holder cubby. I always forget about those. It's not super often that we pull that center dash apart. Usually it's for doing the center diff lock switch. And we don't do those super often. But yeah, it's one of those, once you think you've got all the screws out, you can kind of just gingerly start popping things apart. And if it doesn't want to come apart, don't force it. Look for more screws. Yeah, God, I can't even remember the last time I had a 91 dash out. I am drinking super awesome cherry bubbly seltzer. Trying to do the whole dieting thing and not drink soda. So cherry bubbly it is. Not very exciting. Wonder if TIS has the dash removal thing. Yes, the bubbly is better than LaCroix. Or LaCroix, however you pronounce that. We usually use like the plastic split loom, but I get it from Del City, and Del City has like a higher temperature rated one. I think they call it high temp split loom. It's the corrugated stuff, but it doesn't seem to break down under the hood, like the cheaper stuff you get from the the parts store or the hardware store. And you can get like 100 feet of it from Del City for not much more than you pay for the little roll of the hardware store stuff. Yeah, it's a bit late in the day for coffee, but I had several cups of very good Guatemalan coffee this morning. Let's see if TIS lists the dash. And they do not. Nope. I do like Costa Rican, but I like Guatemalan even better. And for the cluster around the radio in a 91 Land Cruiser, it's showing the 2 screws by the ashtray, and then it's showing a third one kind of down and up underneath of the looks like the ignition switch. This picture's really hard to look at. But there's three screws, and the third one's over next to the steering column. So hopefully that helps. Yeah, I'll drink pretty much any South or Central American coffee. But Guatemalan's definitely my favorite. But I do like the really good campfire taste of the Costa Rican. I miss Costa Rica. That was an awesome vacation. You need to go out, Trillian? Sorry about that. Dogs wanted to go out, and it's finally stopped raining here, so I'll go let them play in the yard while they can. I feel like there was something else I was going to bring up on chat this evening, but for the life of me, I can't remember what it was. Any idea why the wipers would blow a fuse on a 9480 series? Does it blow just sitting there, wipers off, or does it only blow when the wipers are on? If it's only blowing when the wipers are on, I would guess that you've got a short in the wiper motor, or the linkage is getting sticky and the wiper motor's having to work extra hard to get everything moving. Or I guess you could just have a short somewhere in the wiring between the wiper switch and the wiper motor, so when you turn the wiper motor on, it shorts out. Does it blow the fuse on all the speeds, or just some of them? Trying to think. Yeah, I mean, you'd pretty much have to have a short somewhere between the wiper switch and the wiper motor, or the wiper motor is working way harder than it should and blowing the fuse. I don't know what's up with idiots that just come on as trolls. Like, I don't know if they don't have anything better to do living in their mom's basement. I don't have to assume your intelligence. I know you're an idiot. You're trolling random people's chats while they're trying to help people. Obviously, you watch it. Yeah, trolls. They're almost as bad as the telemarketer spam people that call all day long. Yeah, code 2526. A lot of times we find it's the O2 sensors. Um, I've run across a bunch of times where it's water that's gotten trapped in the O2 sensor plug and, corroded the pins, that making it read funky. So if new sensors don't fix it, try getting electrical contact cleaner and cleaning the plugs really well. If they've got the green electrical funk in there, try cleaning those out so you get really good contact. A lot of times that'll help. And make sure you've got good O2 sensors. Like, for some reason, the Bosch ones don't play well with Land Cruisers. We use either the NGKs, or I guess it's NTK when it's an O2 sensor, or the Denzos. And what else you got, JT? That's a really weird one. Horn only works from 1 to 20 miles an hour, but not stopped or over 20 miles an hour. Um, I have no idea what would do that. Um, I can't think of anything that would tie the horn circuit in with speed. And okay, if you've got Denzos, Denzos are good sensors. I'm gonna see if TechStream goes back far enough to catch the horn and see if I can see it in the wiring diagram, because I can't think of anything that would connect the horn and speed. Yeah, it's just the horn switch, and it goes to the horn relay. Has horn fuse. Yeah, maybe loose ground, or I'm thinking maybe like the horn flexes. So when you're at a standstill, it's flexed and doesn't work. But when you're moving 1 to 20 miles an hour, it's enough to vibrate it back into position, and faster it goes too far. Yeah, that's weird because according to the wiring diagram, I mean it's simple. It goes horn switch, relay, the two horns. Um, yeah, unless you've got like a flaky horn relay, but I don't know how speed would affect that. That's just weird. And I just realized I'm cutting the top of my head off, so we'll move the the camera up a little bit. Thumbs up are always good. Yeah, the only other thing I can think of is where the horn wiring kind of traces along the underside of the core support. Maybe that whole loom is moving, when you're moving. Maybe there's a break or a short in that loom that moves to the right position under 20 miles an hour. But that just, I don't know. That's a weird one. Does all the wiring look like it hasn't been hacked? Because I've seen some things where, like a horn won't work or the AC stops working, and people do some crazy rerouting of the switch wiring, like feeds, and they'll pull off something else. And I guess it's possible they could have pulled off of like the speed sender or something like that to pull power for the horn. But that would be such a crazy long shot that I can't really see that being it. Fuse blew in rain on intermittent. Have you put a new fuse in it since, and does it continue to blow on intermittent, or was it just that once? What's going on, Daniel? How's your truck doing? Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's one of those you'd almost have to like strip the wiring out of the harness, and check it from the horn all the way down, or the horn switch all the way down to the horns, and yeah, try to find where it's screwing up, because that's just weird. Um, and yeah, to huff, yeah, I would just start checking the motor wiring and all that jazz just to make sure everything's on the up and up if it keeps blowing fuses. And to John, interior nightmare to fix sunroofs. It is not fun at all. You end up pulling the grab handles, the upper pillar covers, and then trying to fish the actual sunroof down and out without kinking it and getting all kinds of fingerprints on it is just, it's not fun at all. I absolutely hate doing sunroof work. I thought I'd seen your cruiser up for sale. I didn't know it had actually sold. Um, I'm glad to hear you got another one. I really liked the color of your cruiser. To Christian, I have no idea on getting an engine wiring harness. Uh, here in the States, you would just go to Toyota. I would assume it's the same over there. Uh, but I don't, we don't have any of the diesel trucks here originally. Um, so it's super rare that I even see them. So I've never had to go looking for a wiring harness, beyond getting a new one from Toyota. I don't know where you'd go to look for one of those. Or there's like Souk, and it's, let me type it in because I think I know how to sell it or spell it. Like, it's Souk. It's something like this. And they seem to be able to source random Toyota parts out of like the Middle East. So you might be able to find it through them. Otherwise, I mean, it's probably going to be something like a salvage yard to get a used one. And a lot of times, salvage yards either cut the harnesses, pulling the engines, or they won't sell just the harness, which sucks. Ah, yeah, if Suit doesn't have them either, I don't know. And more 80s are always better as far as Daniels is concerned. I think when my wife and I started dating, I had 7 Toyotas. Um, I think I'm back up to 4, maybe 5. Almost none of them run, but I've got a lot of them. And to Christian, what's wrong with the harness? Is it just, got bad wiring in it? Was it in a vehicle fire? Um, uh, yeah, because like if it's a really trashed harness, it's not going to be fun to rebuild. Yeah, between my roommate and I think at one point we had like 14 or 15 Toyotas in the apartment parking lot. It was awesome. And to Thomas, do we see a lot of 80s with driveline vibes after 3-inch and above lifts? Um, Almost all of the 80s that come through that we see are, the standard Old Man Emu 2.5-inch. And the driveline vibrations we're seeing on those are the slip joints being worn out and just being sloppy. And you can hear the slip joints howl, as you go over bumps and stuff. We don't get a whole lot of them coming through with taller lifts. We've got, a couple of customers that have got the dual cardan front shafts on there from Wits End. And then we've got some that are still running stock shafts and fine. Of course, a lot of times, the guys that are running greater than 3-inch lifts are also running really knobby tires. So you might not be able to feel it in their trucks. It may be there, just nobody's complained about it. And the Christian, yeah, fixing fire damaged wiring harnesses is not fun. I had an old Supra, and the exhaust manifold warped and pulled the back studs out and blew hot exhaust on the back of the wiring harness and melted out a good chunk of it. And fixing that was not a fun time. Yeah. I mean, you might be able to, to find one at a salvage yard. Of course, depending on age, the one out of the salvage yard may not be all that much better than, than what you're trying to replace. I hate doing wiring harness work. I finally got the one for the 3FE swap. The harness for that all finished up, and it was not fun. How necessary are adjustable panhards and drag links after a lift? Um, so the drag link's automatically adjustable because it adjusts for alignment. As far as the panhards, when you go with a lift, your panhard's like this, and then you lift it, and it goes at a steeper angle, and it offsets your axle. So like the front axle kicks over to the driver's side, and the rear axle kicks to the passenger side. Like 2.5 inch a lift, you're not really gonna see that splay. They'll be off, but you won't see it. When you get higher, you get into like, half inch, 3/4 of an inch off center, and you can see it. And then it makes sense to do adjustable panhards to bring the axles back under the center of the truck. Otherwise, you'll get more tires stick out on one side than another. Um, on regearing, um, I would probably stick with 488s, and 35s. I just My gut tells me 529s would put you like too high of RPMs on the highway. And that's just a gut feeling. I haven't actually run the math on that. Um, I've got 529s in my Forerunner, and running 35s in that, it was about perfect. It was a little bit higher in the RPMs, but it was nice because it was a little 4-cylinder. The 80s have got enough grunt that I think you can still stay 488 with 35s, and the 488's a bit stronger of a gear. It may lower your highway RPM a little bit, but I think that would be a good thing. I've got a couple customers that are running, 35-ish tires, and they've just re-geared to the underdrive gear in the transfer case, which I think mathematically works out to like a 456. And that's what I'm going to end up doing in my 80 because it's already got the e-lockers. So rather than going in and opening up the diffs again, now that they've got this underdrive gear for the transfer case, I'm just going to do that and call it good, and call it close enough, because it's a whole lot easier and cheaper to do the transfer case gear than it is to mess with both ends. Wrecked 80 with a good motor, solid 80 with a bad head gasket, motor swap, worth it. Pulling the drivetrain out of an 80 isn't that bad. You can disconnect the wiring harness at the ECU behind the glove box, pull the whole harness through, take the hood off, take the core support, radiator, AC, all that jazz out. and then you can pull the entire drivetrain out the front and split everything on the ground. We've been doing that a lot lately, even for head gasket work. Pulling the engine clean out of the truck and doing the head gasket on the engine stand. And what's my recommended diff fluid and grease for U-joints? Diff fluid, for the most part, we just use, parts store 80, 90, gear oil. We get it in the 5-gallon buckets. And grease for U-joints, same thing. Just, a tube of, usually I use like the Mobile One synthetic grease in the grease gun. But, really it's just whatever U-joint rated grease is laying around. And to Daniel, it's like a 10% load difference, and the TK seems to handle them fine. It's yeah, it seems to handle them fine. I'm not concerned about it. It's not that much of a load difference, and it lets you keep the stronger factory 410 gears, which is my big like too. And yeah, if Christian, if you've got a link to the spreadsheet for gear ratio and resulting speed, that would be awesome. I know I've seen a ton of them on the internet. Yeah, I always have to look them up each time I need to know it. And to Skittles, is there any options for getting a little more lift out of the front of his 100 series? They've already got the 2.5 heavy kit. I mean, you could crank the torsion bars up more, but the 100 series being IFS, the more you crank the torsion bars up, the steeper of an angle you're putting on the CV shafts, and the closer you're going to be riding to bump stops. The higher you go, the worse the ride's going to get. So yeah, there's not a real good option, unfortunately. And a 646 silver, there probably are specific part numbers for the vacuum lines coming out of the charcoal canister. I've never looked it up. I just, anytime I need to do vacuum lines, I just make them out of bulk hose. But I know, from Toyota, they can order, Toyota vacuum line. I've just never looked it up. Yes, if you're going to open the diff to put lockers in, then TK's gears would probably be, to do both would be a more expensive option. If you're going to already open the diff for lockers, then I would just do diff gears when you've got that open. And to Manuel, does the gear inside the oil pump on the 80 series need to be oriented on a particular way? There's a mark. I've never actually taken that gear out. Let me look real quick and I'll see if I can find it. I don't know the diameter of that hose off the top of my head. I want to say it's 6 millimeter, but I could be completely wrong. And that's not helpful. Just a sec, I'm trying to see if they've got a drawing. I'm looking in the factory manual, and I'm not seeing a specific orientation listed. But I could be completely missing it. But I've actually got to pull an oil pump tomorrow on an 80 series and shoot a video on it. So I should have a video doing that shortly. And let me come over here. Yeah, changing the transmission mounts. It's not nothing hard about it. You're going to want to, put something, either a block of wood under the transmission pan and a jack to support it. You need something to hold the transmission up while you take the cross member down. But beyond that, it's the two big nuts in the center of the cross member, and then four, I think, 17 millimeter headed bolts at the transmission. Super easy to change, assuming you don't drop the transmission on yourself. And to Christian, the gear ratios are probably different. But the steps in ratio should be close enough to get an idea. To get an idea of the speed change. And yeah, if you do support by the trans pan, you just want to make sure you use a block of wood that's big enough to cover the whole bottom of the pan so that it's resting, like the weight's resting on the vertical parts of the trans pan, like not just in the middle of it where you're going to dent the pan upwards, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's fine to do it that way. We've also caught them, like by the rear output flange on the transmission, but it's harder to grab them back there and still have room to get the transmission cross member out of the way. Yeah, we've got a leaky timing cover at the shop. So since I got to do the timing cover, doing timing chain and all that jazz and doing a video while we're at it, I started on it today. So hopefully I'll have it done in the next couple of days. And to Thomas, no updates on the Shady 80. I've just been so swamped. We've been just swamped at the shop. So no time and no space at the shop. And I had thought I was going to go down this past weekend and do the knuckles on it. But ended up going to a show at my wife's work instead. And then, doing house stuff and errands. So yeah, no movement on the Shady 80 yet. Although I did get these super awesome valve stem caps that I showed at the beginning of the show that Outsane FJ80 made me that are laser engraved with the OTRAM logo. So those are going on the Shady 80. It's possible if your tranny mounts are really bad, you could hear them clunking. And it would make sense changing direction that you'd be changing the load. So it's possible that's the clunk you're hearing. I really doubt the Shady 80 will be ready for coal mine. That was my original goal, but looking at the budget for parts that I would need to get it even in some semblance of wheelable shape, uh, I don't think that's going to happen because we just took over the other half of our shop building, so my shop rent just doubled. Uh, which it's going to be a bit tight for the next couple of months until we get a third tech on board and are actually fully using the other side. Uh, yeah, so the budget's really tight, and I doubt there's going to be enough room in the budget to get to get all the parts I need for the Shady 80 in time for coal mine. So it's still a lofty goal, but I really doubt it's going to happen. And to Daniel, you're describing my wish list of 80 series suspension. Uh, very excited. And once you get it on, you'll have to bring it by because I'd love to see how that rides. To Manuel, I've never seen an 80 series timing chain go bad. We've had several heads off, at the mid 200,000s, and the chains still felt good. The only time I've replaced one is because one of the guides broke. And since I had to take everything apart to get to the guide, you might as well put a chain in while you're at it. But I've never seen one actually go um, bad to need to be changed. If you've actually got the engine all the way out of the truck to do the head gasket, it wouldn't be a terrible amount more to do the timing chain now. When it's still in the truck, it's a pain because you've got to lift the engine up to get the oil pans out. But if you've got the engine out already, it may be worthwhile to do a timing chain. And to Terry, it depends on what coolant is in the 4.7. If it's the older red coolant, it's the older Toyota Black FIPG, and I can never remember the part numbers. But there's one that's labeled like oil housing and cam cover, something like that. And for the red coolant, it's that one. For the new pink coolant, there's an updated sealer that comes in like a green tube, and it is expensive. It's like $100 a tube at Toyota. So yeah, the pink I think started around 2004, 2005. Before that it would have been red. So 2006 is probably the pink. So technically, it should be the newer super long life coolant proof sealer. I say should be because my local dealer doesn't even stock that. They use the older style sealer, and supposedly, according to them, it'll make it through warranty period before leaking. I use the stupid expensive stuff just because that's what the book calls for, but theoretically you can use the older sealer. And to Eric, I would not monster line a truck unless it's a complete, rattle trap. Yeah, monster line's just going to kill resale value on that. Changing bulbs in the climate control unit on an 80 series. I've only done it once. I don't remember it being bad. You just pull the pull the climate control unit out, and I want to say there was a piece that like popped out of the back that had the bulbs in it. But yeah, like I guess it's form in place gasket is what FIPG in the Toyota lingo stands for. And they've got several different ones. There's an orange, two blacks, and I'm not sure on the other. I think there's another one as well. But I use the Toyota stuff just because it holds up excellent and I've never had a leak from it. I don't know how well just a generic Forma gasket would hold. And a Mike Otram, when I very first started out, I was mobile. So it was on the road again, mobile mechanic, because I worked out of a van and went to people's houses. And we stopped that about 3 years ago when I moved into the shop. And to Thomas, we keep green, red, and pink in stock. I've never seen a problem with the green. If it's straight green, like if they flushed it with water and put just straight green in, I would just leave it green. If it's a mix of red and green, I would probably flush it with water and then fill it back up with green. I prefer green, especially on the older trucks, because if you're in the middle of nowhere and you spring a leak, the chances of finding green are much, much better than finding red. Although red's gotten easier to find lately. So yeah, our basic rule of thumb is if they have green in them, we put green back in them. If they've got red, we use red. If they've got pink, we use pink. I hate the new pink coolant. It seems to kill water pumps, radiators. It just seems to leak. It's like it eats everything. But it has something to do with the new metallurgy on the trucks, so we leave those pink. If they're called for pink. But technically the red is longer mileage, longer life coolant than the green. But it's an old truck. You're probably going to have enough leaks that you're going to be, dumping it and filling it often enough that the mileage aspect doesn't matter. And to Lee, yep, got the caps. I've been showing them off a couple of times here during chat. These things are awesome. And for those of you just tuning in, they're valve stem caps with the Otram logo laser engraved onto them. And I put the link up towards the top of chat where you can find the different Toyota valve stem caps. Did JB AC's out on the 80 series? What would it cost to replace the entire system? It would be ungodly expensive to replace everything. Probably a couple grand. I would have a shop that's good at AC diagnose the system, and see exactly what it needs. Because just going in whole hog and replacing everything can get real expensive real quick. Yeah, we got the valve stem caps came in the mail today. Super awesome, and thank you very much. I really dig them. I'm going to put them on the Shady 80. Recommended service on 80 series transmission. Yeah, we usually just do the drain and fill. God, it's probably been 6 or 7 years since I did a filter on one. And if I recall, the filter is basically just a screen. So you could probably get away with cleaning it. But, if you're in there, you might as well change it. Shift solenoids, I would only mess with if you're having problems. I wouldn't go in just playing around. And I'm trying to think. Yeah. I mean, we just normally do the drain and fill for most all of them. Unless for some reason like the pan gasket's leaking and we've got to go into them. And to Mike, thinking of getting a GX 470. Um, the GXs seem to be popular. We don't see very many of them, other than doing like timing belts and radiators on them so far. I've had a couple people call me about, doing the air suspension to Prado coil, but we haven't actually ever done one. So yeah, they seem like good trucks, but I don't see enough of them to really have a super awesome opinion on them. And to June, wow, that is a stuck crank pulley. Um, it's funny. Another local shop has had, I think, two in a row that were super stuck and broke all kinds of breaker bars. They ended up using a torque multiplier to get it to break loose. Um, yeah, I've never run into a really stuck one. Usually, put the crank holder on there, uh, and a really long breaker bar, or yeah, really long breaker bar on the crank bolt, and I'm able to pop them loose. I've never had one be insanely stuck, especially with a 950-pound impact. Um, yeah, we had one. We had to pull one earlier this week, and we forgot to do it while it was in the truck, so we couldn't use the crank holding tool because we didn't have anything to anchor against. My big 1/2-inch impact wouldn't touch it, but the shop next door has a 3/4-inch Milwaukee cordless, and it zipped it right off. So maybe find somebody with a monster impact, like a 3/4 or 1-inch gun, and that's the only real thing I can think of. And the trip was amazing. I would move to Portugal in a heartbeat. I absolutely loved it there. Um, if we had known how beautiful the southern coast of Portugal was, we wouldn't have spent nearly as much time in Lisbon. We would have just hung out on the cliffs down south. Yeah, I've had to borrow the 3/4-inch Milwaukee gun from the guys next door a couple of times. Enough times that there's one sitting in my Amazon cart, um, for when I've got some free spending money. Because I think it would be super useful to have for those times when the 1/2-inch gun won't do it. And to Miles, um, the overlanding scene probably has something to do with it. Cruiser prices just seem to come and go. Like early 2000s, you could pick up an 80 series, for $1,000 pretty easily. And now they're way high. It seems like the 40 series are finally coming down, but the 60s and 80s are coming up. I think it's just a cycle. They're going to go up, they're going to go down, depending on what's popular. And if you guys don't mind, I'm going to pop off of here for the evening. I got to go feed the dogs and get dinner ready. And to Daniel, what do I think about the Wits End Turbo? I think the Wits End Turbo is an amazing product. Granted, I've never seen one in person, but having seen Joey's other products, I can't imagine it's going to be anything but over the top notch. Like Joey only puts out just awesomely amazing stuff. And if it's theoretically had headwork in the past, I'd almost lean towards throwing the turbo on and seeing what happens. And what's for supper? We're having tempeh, cabbage, and pineapple tacos. Um, oh, and Eric brings up a good point about the Tuesday evenings. So I've started trail running lately, and there's a local like park or adventure camp that's doing Tuesday night trail runs through the end of June. That I would really like to go to the Tuesday night trail runs, except for the same time as Tuesday chat. So I might possibly move Tuesday chat to Thursdays through June so that I can go do the trail runs. But I'm not completely positive that I'm going to do that yet. But yeah, keep an eye out. If you see Tuesday chat shift to Thursday for a little bit, um, it's because I'm trying to get healthy and trail run. And to Mike, yeah, we come up with weird dinners. We're vegetarian with weird tastes, and I'm trying to improve my diet. so, so yeah, lots of weird ways of integrating vegetables. But cool. Okay, so this time I really am signing off. So you guys have an excellent evening, and I will catch you next week, probably on Thursday. But I will post post the thing in the schedule. I'll catch you guys later. Thanks for tuning in.